Never miss an episode of the LJS podcast. Become a subscriber at learnjazzstandards.com/newsletter and get all of the latest from Learn Jazz Standards sent right to your inbox. That's learnjazzstandards.com/newsletter.
All right, what's up, everybody? My name is Brent, and you're listening to the LJS podcast. The LJS podcast is the podcast where you get weekly jazz tips, interviews, stories, and advice for becoming a better jazz musician. So if you're a jazz geek, you are in the right place. And no matter where you're listening from, whether it's from our home base at learnjazzstandards.com, iTunes, or YouTube, thanks for listening in today and welcome. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to tune in. And for today's episode 46, it's kind of a unique episode and a unique topic. I've gotten questions about this from users of the blog and listeners of our podcasts about this topic, and so I thought I'd address it today and just see if this is something that maybe you'd be interested in. And if so, always feel free to leave a comment in the show notes on learnjazzstandards.com. Go to podcast in the top menu and find this episode 46 to leave a comment. But today's episode is about how to make extra money with a jazz side hustle. How to make extra money with a jazz side hustle. Now, I know that most listeners of this podcast, or at least a good percentage, are what I call hobbyists. Now, hobbyists, they already have a day job. They already make a living by some other means than music, but they are jazz aficionados. They love jazz. They love music in general. And so when you have free time, you're off practicing your instrument, listening to jazz music. Like I said, you're a jazz geek. That's why you're here. And that's what you do. Now, I'm lucky enough to make a full-time living as a musician, and I know there's others listening on the podcast today that do that as well, but I know that that's not for everybody. It's also not realistic for everybody. It's really quite difficult to make a full-time living as a musician, and that's why I think actually making money off of being a jazz musician can be the ultimate side hustle. So if you love your day job that you do right now, you enjoy it, you have no problem with it, but you're just looking to make a little bit of extra money on the side, and you happen to really love playing jazz, and that's what you spend the rest of your time doing anyways, jazz could be a great side hustle for you. And maybe if you even don't like your job so much, but you do love playing music and you do love playing jazz, but that just kind of seems like this far-fetched idea of ever doing it full-time, well, a great place to start is a side hustle, something to just do on the side and slowly grow that as a business. Now, let me quickly give you a straight definition of what a side hustle actually is. A side hustle is any small business that you do in addition to your regular job that you do all day long, and it just adds to your monthly revenue. It just adds to the money that you already make. So it can be very helpful for your life financially, and oftentimes it can be very fulfilling because, like I said, a side hustle is usually something that you enjoy doing anyways, and you already have some talent in that arena. So it's not something you do as an extra kind of labor. It's usually a labor of love that also makes you some money. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I don't have any extra time to do any of this stuff, well, then a side hustle is really for you, actually. A side hustle is something that is not what takes up most of your time. I mean, again, your regular job is taking up all your time. A side hustle is just something a little bit extra to work on, to slowly grow, to slowly build, to make a little bit of extra money, and doing something that you love doing. So presuming that you like playing jazz already and you spend any of your extra time practicing jazz, this is a great side hustle for you. So you don't have to have a lot of time to make jazz your side hustle. It's really something you do extra and in addition. So I'm going to go ahead and give you some tips and advice for making jazz a side hustle. And whether or not you want to do this, this will be interesting to find out how you can actually make any kind of money as a jazz musician in today's modern music industry. Now, remember that a side hustle is not supposed to take up too much of your time. So if you're a jazz musician, you already are practicing jazz, working on your craft, now you can try to convert part of that time into your side hustle time, into your making jazz a business time. And that's precisely what I want to talk about. But I also want to say too, that if you don't feel like you're quite there yet, if you feel like maybe your skills as a jazz musician haven't gotten to a point where you have something to offer the rest of the music community, something to exchange for your services, then you might want to work on that a little bit before graduating on to making this a side hustle. However, you can keep this in the back of your head, all of this information, as something to work towards. I think that'd be a great thing to do. So, I think the first place to start when talking about making jazz a side hustle is how you're going to transition from hobby to business. Okay, how you're going to transition from hobby to business. And this is really just a different kind of mentality. It's a switch in the way you're thinking. A hobby is something that you just do for fun because you simply enjoy it. And that's a wonderful thing. And if you want to stay there, then by all means, stay right in that space. But when you switch to a business kind of thinking, then you're thinking about how you can use your talents in order to make a little bit of money. How can you contribute or give some kind of service to those who want your music and make some extra cash out of it? So you have to think more like a business person, not so much just as an artist or someone who just plays for the love of playing it. Now, I'm going to touch on some different revenue streams that you can think about for making money as a jazz musician. But before I do that, I want to address a little bit further this mentality switch from hobby to side hustle, because I really do think it's important. And the first thing that I think you should really consider is to look for opportunities. You know, a business person is always looking for opportunities and asking questions like, what are my talents and how can those talents be used in my environment? So you should be looking for opportunities. There's opportunities everywhere if you think about it to make some money as a musician. You just have to look in the right places. So keep your eyes open for opportunities always. You know, that's a big difference between just being a hobbyist and not really worrying too much about, can I make some extra money off of this or not? You have to be looking for opportunities if you want to change this into a side hustle. Now, to go along with that, the second thing is you need to start thinking like an entrepreneur, okay? Start thinking like an entrepreneur. How can I take the talents that I have, think outside of the box, and figure out my own way to make some money, some revenue off of playing jazz or teaching jazz? I mean, there's so many different ways that you can actually make money, especially with online these days. You know, there's so many different ways you can make money on the internet from music, let alone actually physically in person in your local environment. So you have to start thinking like an entrepreneur. Maybe there isn't a lot of gigs in the town or city you live in, and you want to play some more gigs and make some side cash that way. Well, maybe you got to make your own gig. Maybe you have to set that up for yourself. Maybe it doesn't exist, so you have to be the one to take the initiative to make that gig happen. Now, maybe all of the teaching jobs at local private lesson studios are already taken. I mean, there's no, openings for you. Maybe you need to start your own lesson studio. Maybe you need to start teaching Skype lessons online and create a business around that. There's a lot of different things you can do, and you just have to think outside of the box. I have a friend who actually writes music for a couple popular YouTube channels. That's kind of thinking outside of the box, and that's really his side hustle to his other musical side hustles. He basically has a bunch of different musical side hustles that actually end up making him a full-time musical living. But one of his quote-unquote side hustles is just composing music for this YouTube channel, and he brings in a good, I would say around $1,000 a month at least from just that YouTube channel, composing music. So that could be a business that you start, something where you're composing and writing short musical pieces for different productions. I mean, find your talents, whether it's in composing, whether it's in playing, whether it's in teaching, and use that to your advantage, but think outside the box. Think like an entrepreneur. That's really important. So there's obviously just a lot of different ways to make a little bit of money from playing jazz. And it's not just the obvious things like playing gigs, although that definitely is one. So that leads me to my next thing I want to talk about, which is some different revenue streams that you can think about for making some money, for making a side hustle. But I'll say all of this before that, it's up to you to come up with your own ideas. I mean, there's so many things you can do. It's up to you to decide what you should do. So hopefully just some of this will help spark some ideas for you and help you pick one or two. I would just say focus on one or two different aspects here and try to figure out where you fit into these so that you can start treating those like a side hustle. So the first one is gigs. I mean, this is the obvious one, playing live performances. This is the actual playing side of it. And it usually comes down to playing actual gigs. And so gigs can come in different forms. They can come in casuals, and casuals are like, just playing for 3 hours at a restaurant during happy hour or at a bar late at night as background music and different things like that. That's what a casual is. And then there's private events. So private events could be, you're playing like in a wedding band for cocktail hours in a jazz band, or it could be, just different galas that you're invited to play at, and you play with your trio, your quartet, or just a duo. And so that's a private event, anything that you're just being hired for specific events. And you can make a whole business around that of really marketing, especially online, your services for doing special events like this. There's a lot of people that do that create wedding bands that specifically only actually even play jazz for cocktail hours and just market themselves that way online and through advertisements as well. And then there's what we call club dates. Now, club dates are where you actually play in clubs where the main focus is the music. So it's not background music. In general, casuals and private events are background music, but club dates are where you're actually playing at a jazz club or a music club in general that focuses on the music. So usually you're taking your own project, some original music. You're not necessarily playing jazz standards as much, and you're presenting that music to the public, to people that actually come to listen to you play. And that can be a way to make money as well. And again, if a club like that doesn't exist in your town or in your city, you can make gigs like that. There are certainly inventive people that will even throw house shows and charge at the door and also provide snacks and hors d'oeuvres to go along with that. So there's different things that you can do as far as creating your own club dates. But of course, look for the opportunities in your own music scene to see if you can get your projects in the door there. So that's gigs. So that covers a lot of things where you can just think about, how can I make money doing that? Maybe you have some vacation time and you want to set up a little tour with your band and go around and play in some different cities and towns that are nearby around you. There's ways to do that. It just takes a little bit of a hustle to set that kind of stuff up. Hey everybody, just taking a quick break from today's show to talk to you about our Ecourse 30 Days to Better Jazz Playing. I get emails almost every day from jazz musicians asking the questions, what do I practice and how do I practice? They know where they want to be in their jazz playing. They know how they want to sound. They're just not exactly sure how to get there. And that's why me and the LJS team have created our new e-course, 30 Days to Better Jazz Playing. 30 Days to Better Jazz Playing is an audio e-course that brings you through 30 days of focused, goal-oriented practicing where you're going to be working on things that will actually improve your jazz playing. This course is designed for all instruments and for all skill levels and is really great for anybody looking to practice with purpose and to make real improvement in their jazz playing. If you want to learn more about this e-course, go to learnjazzstandards.com/30 days. That's learnjazzstandards.com/30 days. I hope to see you in the course. Now, the really big one that you need to consider is education. Okay, education is super important when it comes to making any kind of money in jazz music. And even the most popular jazz musicians who make great livings full-time, they're always teaching. They're not just performing. Even if they're touring all over the world for quite a few days out of the year, whenever they come back to their home base, they're teaching in some shape or form. And so with education, there's, of course, just your private lessons where you have students come to you or you go to them and you teach them how to play. And that's obviously a great thing, to teach others how to play music. That's a great service, not only to help you make a little bit of side cash, but it's a great thing to always spread the music to other people. So that's teaching lessons. Of course, you could also do like masterclass kinds of things where you get a large group of people together and you teach on a specific topic. It just takes some organization skills to get that together. Now, there's also creating educational materials like books. For me, I've been hired by Hal Leonard, the music book publication company, to write a couple books. And that's actually been some side hustles to my side hustles, making some extra money doing that and providing some educational material with music books. You can also do ebooks as well if you can find a way to market an ebook. So if you have a great idea for some musical materials you want to present to the world, put together an ebook and sell it online. You can do that as well. Now, you can also, like I said before, do Skype lessons online, different things like that. But online education is really something that you should really think about and consider. I know a big thing as well is courses, which, LearnJazzStandards.com, we provide a course as well called 30 Days to Better Jazz Playing. That's a great example of, taking online platforms and, teaching something to someone and making a little bit of money while doing that. So that's something to consider as well. Now, there's other things like composing and recording that I haven't really touched on yet, but those are definitely really great things that if you find yourself to be talented in those arenas, that you can use that to make some extra cash as well. So just brainstorm ideas of how those kinds of things can help make you money as a musician as well. Now, I want to just kind of close up here by just saying why starting a side hustle is great, even outside of just making money, because obviously the money part is a big reason why you start a side hustle, but there's also other reasons for just your musicianship why it can be important. For example, playing gigs is something that I think that every jazz musician should be doing for their jazz education, because playing gigs is a totally different thing from practicing alone in your room and even going to a jam session and playing at a jam session. It's kind of a different mentality. And when you're put in that professional kind of situation, it really puts your music to the test. I really think that the best practice you can do is actually on the bandstand. I've learned so much more from playing gigs professionally than just sitting in the practice room. Both are important, but being forced to play gigs is a great thing. So that's one great reason to make a side hustle out of jazz. Now, teaching other people is also a really great thing. Now, you don't have to be the best musician in the world, but if you have done your own homework, if you feel like you are prepared to share something with somebody else, it's likely that there's someone that can learn from you. So teaching, I find, always reinforces what I already know. Sometimes when I actually have to explain something to someone or show someone something, it really helps me learn more as well. Maybe sometimes there's something that I am a little bit rusty at. So when I actually teach it to somebody, I'm actually forced to practice that a little bit and work on that so I can explain it to somebody. Or maybe I just never really thought about something in a very methodical way to conceptualize something. So it can be helpful to teach those things to other people. So in that sense, teaching music to other people in any kind of avenue that you choose, whether it's one-on-one private lessons or if it's like pre-recorded little mini master classes, that's a great way to not only make a little extra money, but help you in your jazz playing as well to become a better jazz musician. Okay, so a side hustle in review here is something that you don't need to have a lot of time to do. If you already love playing jazz, you have a day job, you just want to convert some of that jazz playing time to business time, to side hustle time, make a little bit of extra money, then a side hustle in jazz is for you. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can make money as a jazz musician, and ultimately you got to be an entrepreneur. You have to think outside of the box, and you also have to look for opportunities. That's really important, to look for opportunities. And in general, you're going to find that most of the ways you can make some money from being a jazz musician is through gigs and education. So constantly be thinking about different ways you can do that. I would encourage you, if you're interested in starting a side hustle from your jazz playing, spend some time after listening to this podcast episode and just start writing down your talents, the things that you're good at in music and in jazz, and just start writing down as many different ways you can think about making just a little bit of money, and then go through that list and pick one or two and really just focus on those. You don't have to make a lot of money. Again, this is a side hustle, so any extra money is a good thing, right? Any extra money that you can make is better than what you had before. So I would really consider starting a side hustle, not only to make a little bit of extra money, be a little bit financially better off, but also because I think it can be really great for your jazz playing to force yourself to do things on a professional level. All right, that's all for today's show. I want to thank you so much for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And if you have a jazz side hustle, I want to hear from you what it is, how you make a little bit of extra cash from your jazz playing. So go to learnjazzstandards.com, podcast in the top menu, and find this episode 46. Leave us a comment in the comment section below. Want to hear from you. This is a jazz community. Now, if you've been liking the show, go to iTunes and leave us a positive review. Every little bit helps. And of course, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend. Tell others about the LJS podcast. And if you got any value after today's podcast episode, consider adding value back by leaving us a one-time, monthly, or annual donation at learnjazzstandards.com/support. That just helps us continue to produce future episodes of this podcast. All right, next week we're going to be coming out with episode 47. I'm looking forward to seeing you then.